Have you ever stopped to think about the life of Jesus? I mean, really think about it. Was it just a series of random events, one thing happening after another, or was there something more going on? Was he just reacting to the world around him, kind of going with the flow, or was he following a very specific, predetermined script, a master plan? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into, because the source material we're looking at today makes a really compelling case for the master plan. The core argument is that his life wasn't lived by chance, but by design. This wasn't a story about someone trying to figure things out as they went along. No, this was the execution of a mission with a crystal clear objective from the very start. And that brings us to the big idea for today. It's a concept theologians call Christological intentionality. Now that sounds pretty academic, right? But all it really means is the belief that everything Jesus did, every word, every action, even every single delay, was completely deliberate. It was all part of a grander divine purpose, like pieces of a giant puzzle fitting together perfectly. So let's dig in and see how the source material actually builds this case, starting with the text itself. So where do we find the proof for this? Well, according to the source, it's not just some vague, overarching theme. It's actually baked right into the language and the very structure of the Gospels. Okay, check this out. One of the biggest clues is this tiny little Greek word, dei. It basically means a divine necessity, something that must happen. And it shows up at some really key moments. For example, remember when the text says Jesus had to go through Samaria? Now, you got to understand that was the long way around, and culturally, Jews just didn't go there. But the word used is dei, which tells us this wasn't about geography. It was a divinely mandated appointment. He had to be there to meet a specific person at a specific well. And it's not just subtle word clues. I mean, we get these incredibly direct purpose statements. Just look at these. He's not saying, well, I think I'll try to, or maybe I should. Nope. It's I must preach. I came to seek and save the lost. These are straight up mission statements. It shows a clear, self-aware purpose right from the get-go. You can also see this intentionality in how he handled his own PR, so to speak. For a long time, he practiced what scholars call the messianic secret, basically telling people, hey, let's keep this miracle on the down low. Why? Well, it was a strategic move to control the timing, to avoid stirring things up too soon. But then, when the moment was just right, he completely flips the script. He orchestrates this massive public event, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It's a total switch from strategic secrecy to maximum publicity, and it was all perfectly timed. All right, so we've looked at the clues in the words and the strategy. Now let's see how this intentionality actually played out in real life, with a few powerful case studies from the Gospels. Jesus was constantly, and I mean constantly, turning social norms upside down. Think about it. He defended Mary's right to sit and learn at a time when that was just not done for women. He purposefully singles out Zacchaeus, a tax collector everyone despised, and says, hey, I'm coming to your house for dinner. These weren't just random acts of kindness. They were intentional, calculated moves to show what his kingdom was all about, flipping our ideas of status and who's important right on their head. And maybe the most mind-blowing example of this is the story of Lazarus. So he gets the message, your friend is dying, come quick. And what does he do? He waits for 2 whole days. The source we're looking at calls this a calculated delay prompted by his love. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But he wasn't being cold. He was waiting until Lazarus was so undeniably dead, 4 days in the tomb, that when he showed up and raised him, no one could possibly deny what it meant. It was the ultimate demonstration of his power over death itself. You know, this kind of intense, deliberate action is what led the famous author C.S. Lewis to come up with his well-known trilemma. Lewis basically said, look, when someone makes claims this big and acts this purposefully, you don't have many options. Either he was a liar, deliberately deceiving everyone, or he was a lunatic, completely out of his mind, or he was Lord, exactly who he claimed to be. The point is, you can't just brush it off as a nice story. The sheer intentionality of it all forces you to make a choice. Okay, so if we accept that all of this was intentional, the big question is, why? What was the point of it all? Why be so meticulous about every little detail? Well, the source breaks it down into 4 main reasons. All right, reason number 1, and it's a big one, fulfilling divine prophecy. Almost everything he did was designed to be a direct callback to scriptures written centuries earlier. It was all about validating his identity as the promised Messiah.
Think of each fulfilled prophecy as another pin dropping on a divine map, proving he was exactly where he was supposed to be.
Second up, to manifest God's glory. So the miracles, they weren't just a magic show. They were signs, and they were always pointing to something deeper. For instance, he didn't just feed 5,000 people to solve a catering problem. He did it to make a very specific point, that he was the bread of life, the one who could satisfy a hunger that was way deeper than just physical. Number 3, and this one is absolutely crucial, the perfection of the atonement.
The road to the cross wasn't something that happened to him. It was a voluntary and highly strategic mission. In fact, theologian John MacArthur points out that his arrival in Jerusalem for that final week coincided exactly with the day the Passover lambs were being selected for sacrifice. The symbolism there is just impossible to miss. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a divine appointment.
And finally, number 4, it was all about establishing a model for his followers. He was literally showing his followers how to do it. The way he balanced this huge, demanding public ministry with deliberate private time for spiritual discipline, that was the blueprint. It was a model for how to live a life of purpose without completely burning out. So let's bring it all together. What's the big takeaway from all this intentionality? What's the enduring legacy of this divine blueprint? Well, the source argues it gives us 2 really powerful things. First, theological assurance. This whole concept means salvation isn't just some cosmic accident. It's the result of a deliberate, meticulously planned, and loving act. And second, it gives us a practical blueprint for our own lives, a model for being proactive and purposeful instead of just reacting to whatever life throws at us. And that really leaves us with something to chew on. We've just walked through this idea of a life where every single action, every word, every moment had a divine purpose. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What would a blueprint for a life like that, a life lived with that much intention, look like for you and me, right here, right now?